Why you wearing a mask? Were you burned by acid or something like that?
Oh no, it's just they're terribly comfortable. I think everyone will be wearing them in the future. Everyone will be wearing them. Everyone will be wearing them. Everyone will be wearing them. Everyone will be wearing them.
Okay.
Coronavirus.
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 Coronavirus. Coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
Coronavirus. Coronavirus.
Coronavirus. Coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
We have a new name for the coronavirus. The World Health Organization has officially called it COVID-19. Co for corona, Vi for virus, D for disease, and 19 because it started last year.
Sick of hearing the words COVID and corona yet? Well, we certainly should be. Yet we should all remember that COVID-19 isn't a virus. It's coronavirus ID19, which is merely a category of alleged flu viruses, with ID19 allegedly denoting last year's flu. Indeed, the coronavirus strain itself didn't even exist until the 1960s, when it was deliberately manufactured using the B814 and 229E common cold strains and combined into corona by the British Medical Research Council and University of Chicago, according to Wikipedia, which certainly means it isn't natural. So the invisible enemy that everyone appears terrified of is nothing more than yet another strain of man-made flu that circulates every year. While it is merely the world authority, experts and media that allege this particular strain is somehow more deadly than the previous one. So just as we find in Mein Kampf, if the authority tells a lie large enough, loud enough, and long enough, then the stupid people will indeed believe every word. And sure enough, as per usual, we did just that.
How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those who are more responsible than others, and they will be held accountable. But again, truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror. I know why you did it. I know you were afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, disease. There were a myriad of problems which conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense. Fear got the best of you.
But it wasn't just fear and paranoia that contributed to our silent obedience and compliance, as any good cult member will always inevitably succumb to their oppressive, charismatic masters. And that's exactly what society is, a form of cult. And should there be any doubt, then we only need examine the official definition to provide all the necessary evidence and proof, as there are 4 basic criteria or steps that determines the existence of any such sect, regardless of the presence or absence of any form of religion. Step 1. Every cult has some form of charismatic leadership, with everyone trusting and believing everything their illustrious master tells them, while here in reality we have not just one, but a whole illusion of choice, with 2 or 3 possible charismatic leaders that offer us everything and anything we desire, should we choose to believe their lies and vote for their version of the same agenda. Step 2. Every cult has some form of indoctrination or mind control, while we are all indoctrinated from birth by our parents, education, and the state, with a media that continually reprograms each and every one of us with their latest narratives and revisions of reality. Step 3. Every cult has some form of influence and control to manipulate and exploit its members, while we are all influenced and controlled through rules, regulations, and laws, and exploited from birth through registration, national insurance, taxes, and slave labor, as money only exists as chunks of metal, slips of paper or plastic distributed by the authority, with the majority consensus policing the minority and the individual through sheer volume and weight, stifling any questions or dissent while monitoring itself, and in some cases reporting those it considers disruptive or abnormal to the authority. Step 4. Every cult has an inherent negative or destructive nature. While this cult has been responsible for all the world's tyranny, conflicts, war, ecological and natural destruction, etc., etc., etc. And while they claim that it's done on our behalf, the reality is that they could care less if we agree or disagree with any of their decisions. However, the true test of a cult comes when anyone attempts to quit or leave. And as there is no possible way to truly and completely leave this world cult without having to re-engage with it in some form or other, then there is no possible way to totally escape its influence. The only real difference here is that cultists tend to hang on every word of their leader, while we appear to operate the exact opposite, being so complacent and lethargic we barely take notice when changes are made. Not that they bother informing us of everything anyway, but we simply don't appear to care one way or the other, caught up in reality's game of Monopoly, obtaining as much as we can and passing go without going straight to jail. We therefore claim cultists are stupid and brainwashed, because they appear to believe and have faith in ludicrous ideologies, while we become the exact same, as none of us ever bother to scrutinize and question the ludicrous ideologies coming from our media, experts, and authority. So when our leaders announced house imprisonment under the guise of a lockdown, most of the world just shrugged and both automatically and unconsciously consented and complied, just like the well-trained circus animals of this vast illusory world circus. It therefore makes little difference whether anyone believes we live in a cult or not, because we all just proved its existence the moment we obediently believed and accepted everything we were told, and then willingly allowed ourselves to be held captive while robotically following all the ludicrous social distancing guidelines in a sort of battered wife Stockholm syndrome, where we all now sit bitching about our new norm while continuing to obediently comply, not just with the existing rules, but also all those that will likely follow. And remember, guidelines are just guides, which are supposed to be suggested lines to follow, and not commands or orders. So if they now suggest we all wear plastic bags over our heads to prevent the spread of the virus, should we all similarly comply? We must therefore also remember that we are programmed to believe experts. We are programmed to believe authority, we are programmed to believe the media, and we are programmed to follow the majority consensus.
But an experiment is not a public opinion poll. It examines behavior under the pressure of social forces, as the experiment of Solomon Asch reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the fifth person with the white T-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2,
2, 3,
3,
3,
3.
But on the third trial, something happens.
2,
2, 2,
2,
2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
1.
Asch found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1.
1. They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me.
1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1.
1.
1.
2. 1. 2.
2.
2.
I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves?
2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing
2.
with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2.
2.
2.
2.
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Ash gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the 3rd position, who also gives the correct response.
1.
1.
2.
1. 2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence. The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes we go along with the group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Ash. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1.
1.
1.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3. Ash's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.
But then, our cult leaders care little about their own society, determining and defining them as a community, which in turn is derived from the word common, that by its definition considers those designated by it as vulgar. And of no special quality or interest, which is every single person within that society, who is by definition merely the roles and the masks we wear, that simply maintain, repair, expand and facilitate the various need and continuance of this reality. And remember, we don't create words or define them. The authority does, using words they claim can be sourced or proven. And to this extent, especially in the UK, they have successfully utilized majority opinion, or at the very least, the illusion of majority consensus, via the media against their own populace. On March 22nd, SAGE, Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies, in cooperation with the UK government, issued their report concerning options for increasing adherence to social distancing. In that report, SPI/B, they outline how best to manipulate the majority against any minority form of disruption or dissent. Under Section 2, Persuasion, they state that the authorities should use increased emotional manipulation to convince the complacent that the threat is genuine, even going as far as to convince and encourage the public to snitch on their neighbours should anyone fail to abide by those guidelines, which are not law. While Section 6, Incentivization, outlines how to influence the majority into approving and adopting what the authority designates as desired behavior. And Section 7, coercion, which means to compel by force or intimidation. They discuss how they can use majority consensus and peer pressure to police itself or any minority not willing to accept the new desired behavior. On May 1st, after being uncovered, the UK government withdrew the document. Still believe we don't live in a cult? However, there are several things we can conclude from this spectacular world debacle. The first and most obvious being that our experts, leaders, and authority have proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that they are completely useless and moronically stupid, while simultaneously proving that they are merely comparable puppets and actors, equally compliant and reliant on a higher force, even greater than themselves, outside of any national level. It should also have become very obvious that they have all consistently and repeatedly lied, not just about a pandemic that was little more than the flu, but also crafted and staged national, regional, and local theatrics to create the illusion of a crisis that didn't really exist, and with a level of real conspiracy unprecedented in the history of the world. And while each and every one of them silence and deny all aspects of their deception, the truth appears to be slowly seeping through to those paying close attention, almost as if guided by a second, unseen hand, desperate to expose the dark and bring it into the light, which also cannot be any accident, because as we all know, secrets remain secret only up until the point where someone wants us to know who or what they are. So while everyone runs around worrying about mass vaccinations, ID chips, 5G, New World Orders, which already exist by the way, present world pandemic as an example, we barely notice the real agenda taking place underneath, and something so massive that it is attempting to destroy everything we currently know or understand in this reality. The snag is, we were all supposed to wake up and see all the deception, corruption, and lies.
Oh, now when I say hello, Mr. Thompson, and press down on your foot, you smile and nod.
No problem.
Hello, Mr. Thompson.
I think he's talking to you.
But unfortunately, all the Homer Simpsons missed the cue. So they had to steadily increase the pressure and the frequency to try and get our attention. But in doing so, turn reality more into a ludicrous Hollywood fantasy rather than anything resembling the norm. In fact, it's become so absurd they couldn't be more obvious. Although, maybe they can. And if we need proof, then all we need to do is sit back, put up our feet, and enjoy the wild ride. And this is where we find the enablers in their many guises. Those who have deliberately been given the future narrative and agenda to purposely drip-feed the hungry audience like some form of leaky sieve, so that future events prove their authenticity and credibility. So of course we should make honourable mention of two of the more latter-day additions, such as David Icke and Alex Jones. And while neither are in any way new to the conspiracy scene, their predictions, for want of a better word, have proved reasonably accurate to draw sufficient attention within the conspiracy genre. However, both Alex and David are consummate showmen. In fact, Alex has already admitted to being an actor, where he also once regularly appeared as a mysterious shadowy informant in Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory series. David too worked within the media before his religious-like revelation during the Terry Wogan show destroyed his career and all his credibility. And while it is true that both have been attacked, ridiculed, censored and discredited, they are still high on the alt media conspiracy lists. When lesser whistleblowers, victims and sources have disappeared, been found murdered, or allegedly committed very questionable suicides, That isn't to say that everything they communicate is false or misleading. In fact, much of what originates from both sources can actually be proven to be true, which in itself makes them both suspect and questionable, simply because they appear to be prophesizing the future, and which places them squarely within the realms of enablers. So it is not inconceivable that the reason these things are coming to fruition isn't because they're both prophets, but rather because they're being fed that same time-specific narrative, while the constant attacks and belittling both their integrity and their content guarantees enough plausible deniability and credibility for anyone lending their faith, pretty much in the same way as Morpheus entices Neo in the Matrix by following the white rabbit. The only snag is, Morpheus's red pill is a deception, intended to keep Neo asleep in Wonderland, where he can lead him down the never-ending abyss that he claims is Alice's rabbit's hole. Although we must also remember that it was David Icke who first introduced the concepts and terms New World Order and One World Government, long before it became the publicized catchphrase of all those world leaders. So did David really uncover a hidden secret, or was he merely introducing the narrative so we would automatically know what it was when it finally did surface? While it was Alex Jones who told us there was a war on for our minds, then used the exact same techniques as those he claims are attacking us to influence our minds with his own particular brand of bias and prejudice. We must also realize that to remain current, they have to uncover new agendas, narratives, secret societies, conspiracy theories, aliens, or whatever new theme is trending. So there will inevitably always be another doom and gloom scenario just waiting around the corner for them to uncover, or their audiences would lose interest, where they would simply fade to black and disappear. It's also important to understand that there are basically two types of enablers. One that is fully aware of the narrative and its deception, while the other believes the information that miraculously falls in their lap, totally unaware they are being used or deceived. Either way, the basic underlying tone is usually intended to create paranoia, division, and fear by over-exaggerating a lesser inevitable agenda. So if we take George Orwell, for example, who introduced us to Big Brother through his book, 1984, the initial concept concerns a tyrannical dictate, with all the accompanying manipulation, torture, mind control, death, mayhem, and destruction. Because it's only through the traumatic experience and horror of reading his work that the reader is traumatized and programmed into placing the idea of an authoritarian state as a threat and enemy deep within their subconscious. So by making any message immediately ominous and deadly, it 1. Gains instant attention, 2. Opens up the fear responses, 3. Triggers heightened awareness, 4. Makes us more susceptible and suggestible to any imminent threat, in this case, whatever is being presented, and 5. Activates the knee-jerk reaction, which is exactly how the pandemic was presented and activated, using the who goes there doctrine. Therefore, the pandemic was never about a deadly virus, as that in itself just masked the true reason for what subsequently followed, and is likely to progress, where the enablers simply prepare the audience for the catastrophic worst-case scenario. We took the information and put 2 and 2 together and come up with 5, while reality, being reality, merely provides a much simplified representation to discredit those parts of the enabler that were deemed unessential, while strengthening credibility and authenticity to those of importance, or vice versa, making what is important seem ludicrous and disinformation appear crucial. And we can see this with the conspiracy of false vaccines with Bill and Melinda Gates. According to the theory, the master plan is to introduce a mandated vaccine that will both microchip and kill a large portion of the populace, which of course should automatically beg the question as to why anyone would want to implant and track someone they intended to dispose of. They certainly wouldn't be going anywhere unless they somehow reanimated as zombies, would they? Ah, but that's just the worst case scenario, right? Yet now we have another problem, as for some unknown reason, the perpetrators allowed all that information into the public domain, and just exposed the entire plot, with a rising resistance, not only against Bill Gates, but any form of future vaccine. They could of course use force, but as this always immediately creates resistance, which leads to a reciprocal reaction from those being oppressed, it is pretty certain that it couldn't be sustained for any great length of time. This of course would also increase exponentially when it became obvious that regardless of the stance, compliance or resistance, then the eventual conclusion of both leads to the same end, that being death. So one can only conclude that if the ultimate intention was to kill us all by Bill Gates' vaccination, then why make everything so complicated when they can simply line us all up and just shoot everyone? Or have bullets now become more expensive than vaccines? That isn't to say vaccines are a good thing, judging by the contents, but there really is no replacement for the natural immune system. So obviously there's a lot more going on than a eugenics or population reduction program, but which sounds extremely good from a diabolical evil mastermind point of view. Although just another bogeyman for us all to be afraid of. Still, Bill Gates is more likely merely an actor wearing the evil mastermind mask, albeit a very poor and cringe-worthy representation, which means he has no other choice than to play the villain, as he's merely a persona, in the guise of a scapegoat, that's simply following his script while providing nothing more than funding and a face for everyone to identify with and see as either friend or foe, depending on our point of view. He certainly wouldn't have the technical skill or ability to manufacture any form of vaccine, and he didn't definitely stop or prevent his initial Microsoft projects from catching viruses either. From his perspective, he believes he's the good guy, elevated to his position by higher authorities, but similarly manipulated like all the rest of us. And while there may be a form of eugenics program aimed at the poorer third world countries, the West is already declining when compared to those in the East. Unfortunately, what most of us are unaware of is that both adrenaline and cortisol are highly addictive, where we can and do suffer withdrawal as the effects begin to fade and we hunger for more. So now, having all become adrenaline and cortisol junkies, we crave the rush, searching for the next devastating conspiracy laden with doom and gloom that current alt media seems to be churning out at a fairly steady rate, which means that the darker, deadlier and more ominous the presentation, the easier it is for us to accept what's on offer, and the more of a high we achieve as a consequence. And why not? It's all fear porn, after all. As a result, it is very easy to be drawn into and believe in any coming satanic apocalypse, especially now as reality appears to fracture. But one can only wonder what on earth the devil will eventually do after he's wiped out all of the human race. Go on a much needed vacation perhaps with his wife and kids. While one can only speculate and laugh at the prospects of the likes of Bill and Melinda Gates, or any of these so-called satanic elite, emptying bins or cleaning toilets because they've eradicated everyone else and have no one left to do all those dirty little mundane jobs. No, vaccines in the main appear to be about control, reinfection and money, because any big pharma controlling vaccines, while at the same time deliberately infecting and continually reinfecting the populace, stand to make trillions off the gullible and ignorance of those stupid enough to take them. They certainly wouldn't make much money from the dead people who they usually rely on to buy all of their various cold and flu remedies every year. Although it would seem that they now just simply claim that there's a deadly virus, pull out some nice neat coloured charts with matching numbers and figures, or issue some form of multicolored alert status, and everyone will believe the new pirate R figures, without a single shred of evidence or proof to back it up. And let's not forget that these are the same people that have ruined all the movies, filled television with utter trash, closed all sports venues and every other form of entertainment, and then locked everyone in their own homes, so that even the most heavily indoctrinated sheep have nothing better to do than question their own reality. And we wonder why everyone is beginning to wake up. So be very wary when looking those gift horses in the mouth, especially when they appear to have elevated platforms from which to perform, especially when the average person never gets the chance to be heard, let alone seen to lead any form of major political, social or conspiracy movement. Particularly anyone pushing dread, fear, paranoia or division as a main theme for their narrative, as they're trying to sell you something, and it's usually not something good. Still, if we actually do want to stop the spread of this or any other future virus, without using any masks, gloves or social distancing, then all we really need to do is switch off. Because in reality, the only isolation we do actually need is that from all the hype, lies and deceit, from all those so-called scientists, experts and government authorities.
So turn off your television sets, turn them off now, turn them off right now, turn them off and leave them off, turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now, turn them off!